This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
We are on episode number 204 of the Practical Prayer Podcast. And so we've been at this for a while. And we started during the pandemic. That's actually when Carol and I met through a circuitous series of events that we've talked about on occasion on the podcast. But you came up with an interesting topic, hearkening back to the 5 years since the beginning of the pandemic and the life-changing events that were going on with that. And the topic is new normal. Mm-hmm. And I remember back in the good old days talking about, well, we're not going to go back to normal. There's going to be a new normal. And now we've got this rearview mirror, and are we there? Is this it?
I don't think so. I remember distinctly, first of all, it doesn't feel like it's been 5 years. To me, it's so much like yesterday. I meet people who feel the same way. I remember right after we were supposed to start, being normal again. And we were all excited. And when I say we, it's this a nondescript, group of everybody excited about the new normal, as though when the whatever said, we could go back to normal now, we're going to suddenly wake up and it was going to be a new normal, which would have been a terrible jolt psychologically if we woke up and there really was a new normal. It was for us to create. But I don't think that we got it. And when I say we, I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I just think that we didn't get it. The new normal is something that we create. But we had never been here before, which is so exciting when I think about this. We've never been here before to create from a nothingness kind of thing, because what was before no longer existed. And I mean circumstances. For example, the church is just emptied out. And I'm not just talking about the ones who were told to close before because of the pandemic, but they all opened and people didn't come back because they didn't want to be there in the first place, I think. And so, but it's okay. That was their opportunity. And I think that is absolutely fine. But when we find our place at a sort of an end and you have to begin again, that's where it's confusing and maybe a little bit frightening because we're from an automatic time space, think it's happened automatically. The light comes on when you walk in the room, the coffee pot, so it's no automatic new normal. We have to do it. Yep.
And it's interesting because up until March of 2020, we were all doing things the way we'd always done them. And, if you talk about globally or nationally, churches, and not New Thought churches and not specifically the ones that you and I are participating in now. But church attendance and participation had been dropping for a long time. It was becoming a less religious country. And at the same time, growing slightly more spiritual. So it came up with the spiritual, not religious aspect of that. And that had been going on for a while. And still, there was if what you do is you go to church on Sunday morning, then every Sunday morning you go to church, even if it starts getting a little stale. And I remember very clearly because my community, New Thought Philadelphia, was meeting in person on the University of Pennsylvania campus. And it's a lovely little living room where we were getting together. And March 8th of 2020 was the last time we were allowed to meet there because everything shut down right after that. Because of my background in technology, we started the next weekend on Zoom and were able to make that work. We've been trying to live stream from our Sunday mornings, but because of the internet security at the University of Pennsylvania, we could not live stream out of that little room. It just was not possible. And we had people who worked at Penn IT, and it's like, no, that's being blocked by the system. So we've been trying to do this new thing, and we were not able to do it. And then suddenly there's this cataclysm, and we start doing something that we'd never been able to do before. And then what happened is we started getting people involved from much farther away than would be able to drive into West Philadelphia. You know, it's a cozy little living room, but now we've got people in New Orleans and Milwaukee and Los Angeles and Phoenix and Atlanta who are participating. And we're getting musicians from all over the world instead of the people who can, you know, get their guitar case and make their way down to our little meeting space. And then it became reasonable to meet in person again. And we started doing that, you know, every once in a while. And the remote people, the people in person was wonderful. We got a chance to get together and hug each other and have side conversations and do all the things that you like to do when you're getting together with a group in fellowship. And the people who were remote, who are on Zoom, who were watching, they were like pissed. It's like, I feel left out. You guys are having a big party over there. I'm just watching your party on TV. When we do it on Zoom, everybody's, you know, in their own little box and we're having a great time and we're connecting, and it's a different experience. So inadvertently, that's the new normal for us. So, and the balance point that we found is that we meet in person and do a hybrid celebration one Sunday a month, and the other 3 or 4 Sundays of the month, we do it all virtual on Zoom. And there are people who are local, who are really close to the meeting location that we have, who still join us by Zoom because they'd rather sit on their couch in their pajamas than have to get up and clean up and put on makeup and get dressed up and then drive over and park, you know, and so forth. Because if you're deciding to go to Zoom church and it starts at 10:30, you can make the final decision about 10:29 and a half.
No. I know. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful situation. I really do. I have not met anybody who agrees with me, but I think that
it's wonderful.
Yeah, I do, because first of all, people should have freedom in as many areas of their lives as possible. And that wasn't even the normal before, but now, I mean, it should be that way. It challenges those such as you who you're setting up, you got a time to start. There's an order of service, and that's probably not the words that you use, but it is the way it goes. And so I think that it's a wonderful opportunity, but it's also, in my thinking, it's a wonderful opportunity for people, and we laugh about it, but I'm okay. They didn't go back because they didn't want to go back. It's okay. And I think that is great if that's how you felt. But I'm wondering, what is your new normal? Because that's not a part of our lives that we are, not that we need not cut that out, but it's who we are. We're spiritual beings. You just can't not connect spiritually in some way. So you don't want to do it this way. Cool. That's good. But how can you do it? Is there what's the new normal for doing that? And are you aware that that is still an incredibly important part of your life? And it takes a little thinking and a little effort. I just meet so many people that are seeking just intensely seeking. And that's a great thing. I think this situation that we found ourselves in gave people the opportunity to just come right out, and say, I'm really seeking, rather than to keep it quiet and,
going to the same church every Sunday and hoping that suddenly there will be something new and uplifting and refreshing there.
hoping.
Yeah.
But there's so many other things, people don't want to go back into a building because it resembles everything that they didn't want. So where are we with this new normal, and how do we find it? How do we begin to create it?
As far as I'm concerned, and this is Bill's opinion, we had an opportunity to knock down all the Lego blocks and start building something new. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of years we really, the stuff that we were building didn't look anything like what it had looked like before. Maybe a year and a half before people started getting back together in person in a meaningful way. And we get to be intentional. Mm-hmm. Once I get back into doing something that's going to feed me spiritually, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Mm-hmm. And what got knocked out from underneath us is the assumption that we could just do it the same way we'd done it before. Mm-hmm. Because we had that pause and we found we needed to do something else. Okay, now the emergency is over. What's meaningful for me? Mm-hmm. Now, the Buddhists have the saying, which is, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Mm-hmm. And the enlightenment doesn't come from chopping wood and carrying water, even if that's what you've been doing all the time. The enlightenment happens from the intentionality that's there. Mm-hmm. So we get to do what we've been doing and be intentional about the sort of experience we want to have, the sort of connection with our spiritual nature that we want to have, and understand that just saying, oh, well, I can't do what I used to do, so it's over, it's a cop-out. It's not a good answer.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. It's not a good answer, but I also like the word that you used, intentionality. I think that's so important. We're not accustomed. If you wake up every Sunday and you go to a place of worship, this is what you do. And mm-hmm. then suddenly it's not there anymore. Now the onus is on you to find a way to fulfill that need in your life, that desire, that emptiness, the void that was created. And if you're not accustomed to being intentional about things, you're there, you're kind of lost. But I think it's just great because it puts the onus. I see people trying to recreate what was, bring it back and but it's not that anymore. And mm-hmm. it's like, okay, we as leaders, spiritual leaders, we have to figure out, okay, well, then what is it? The doctors, it's their responsibility to know the diagnosis, how to cure, to read the signs, not right. the patient, so to speak. I don't think that's a very good example, but I think you might understand what I mean.
Let's run with it anyway, because yes, it is the doctor's responsibility to know what the current state of the medical art is, and what are the best the best practices to do when somebody comes in presenting with a particular symptom, and they're really good at that. Mm-hmm. But if the patient doesn't go in and ask for help, the doctor does not chase them. The doctor doesn't go to your house and say, "Hey, I noticed that there's something wrong with your spleen."
Right.
You have to go in and say, "All right, there's something that's going on here, and the room for change." I'm in the middle of wedding season now. It's June. Mm-hmm. And I love doing weddings. That's my website. I love doing weddings.com. How's that for really simple and easy to remember? And being a New Thought interfaith, trans-denominational, whatever, minister, where I'm not locked into somebody else's something. And also the fact that I'm based in Pennsylvania. and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, because of the Quakers, if you're actually in clergy, the requirements for the wedding ceremony are very, very minimal. Well, a lot of times I'll be talking to a bride and groom, and one of them, maybe both of them, grew up Catholic, and the bride doesn't really want to get married in the Catholic Church. And sometimes it's because that's no longer resonates with them, or it's not fashionable, or they've moved away from participating in the church. And sometimes it's as simple as, I don't want to be that far away from the cocktail hour. We have to finish up in the church and everybody gets into their car and goes over to the reception hall. It just makes it too disruptive. So I've had some of those as well. And the interesting thing is, and I'm going to use the Catholic Church because a Catholic wedding mass is a very specific, particular thing, and it goes on for a while. And there is a structure to it, and the priests are really in the flow of doing that. And when you get into their machine, then you get processed through the machine. It goes through all the steps, and it is a Catholic wedding mass with your name. Mm-hmm. And we get to putting together their wedding ceremony. It's like, okay, in Pennsylvania, there's only actually 3 things we really have to do. Okay, they need to say they want to be married to each other. So that's the vows. Mm-hmm. I do the pronouncement saying, I believe the vows, you're now married. And then there's paperwork. And that doesn't take very long. So everything else becomes optional. Mm-hmm. And what changes there is, I don't have to go through the wedding mass. I don't have to do what the guy is saying. I don't have to do what everybody else has done. I can choose for myself what calls to me, what resonates for me. Mm-hmm. Do I want to light a unity candle and have my parents and his parents come up and light a candle for our families and pass those to us, and then my beloved and I get to light our candle together as a symbol of the new family that we're starting today, right after Reverend Bill says, I now pronounce you. If that's meaningful, then they can do that. And if something else is going to sing to them or call to them or inspire them, I've had people do the same thing they take soil, because both families are gardeners. So they take some from the bride's family garden and from the groom's family garden. They put it together into a pot. They plant some wildflower seeds in there, and that's their new family growing out of the soil of their existing families. If that's meaningful to you, then you can do that and bring meaning to it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just talking about how cool it is to do a New Thought wedding, but also about when you bring intentionality to it. Let's take all the stuff away. Let's take away the fact that we go to church every Sunday morning from 10:30 to 11:45. Let's take all that away. What do I want to do? Mm-hmm. How do I want to experience my spirituality? Mm-hmm. And then we get to invent that again from the ground up. It may look exactly like it did before. It might look like something completely different. Mm-hmm. Let's take a break. I can see that you've got all sorts of things to add in there. We're going to take a break and then continue talking about the new normal. Am I right? Yeah.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchione.
We are talking about the new normal, and I did a big spiel before the break, so I'm going to let you talk.
Well, I'm loving the idea And probably, I started to say more than I should, more than, there are probably more than some people who would approve of it. When do you get a chance like this again? You know, when I was little, growing up in the church, obviously, I mean, I was born into a deeply Christian family and denominationally mixed, but clearly no wiggle room whatsoever. And I didn't know that there was anything else. Now, all of a sudden, and that's where it leaves off for me, but here comes an opportunity where all of that is no longer. You get to make a choice. You get to choose to do something different from what you didn't like doing in the first place. And not just that you join other people who are searching and seeking. What an amazingly beautiful experience it is to meet people like that. So then you hear this term co-create, and you know we're co-creators of our own reality, and I stick, co-creators with spirit of our own care, all of that. I stick that in there. But here's the thing: you get to do it the way you thought, the way you hoped, the way you want to feel it. You get to feel your way into what works for you, what feels fresh and peaceful and exciting. You get to try stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody to say you can't, because there's no rules. I mean, if you want to go back, you know what I mean? You could go back to what you were doing. But at this point, you were so free to ask questions, because when I was, coming up, you can ask questions. My father would say, "Carol, please." I can hear him now. just
Carol, please.
Leave the people alone. He would never tell me not to ask. The ride home from church, "Carol, please, just leave them alone. They just don't, you're asking them things they can't answer." And he'd just shake his head.
Or that they're not willing to answer.
They're not willing, and he would just drop his head and just please. And it's funny, oddly enough, one of my children are like that too. But anyway. It is so exciting. But then this frightening, the scary part, I guess, for some, there's no answers. And are we accustomed as a culture to be in a place where there's no pat answers? Like, you're finding your own answers. You're finding your own way. You don't have to seek approval. It's just you and spirit. And whoa, when has that ever been okay?
Yep. Well, and you're asking about the general population of people who believe that they're okay, they've got it figured out, and that they're doing just fine. And for that population, that's the case. There is a subset of the population that gets to go through this process whether they want to or not. And those are people who wind up in a 12-step program. And the first step of the 12 steps is admitted that we were powerless over whatever it is that we've gotten our life involved in, and that our lives had become unmanageable. Mm-hmm. And that's the important part for this. Our lives had become unmanageable. Mm-hmm. So if you're going along doing what you're doing and your new normal is not working for you, that's your life becoming unmanageable. Mm-hmm. So there is something different that gets to be done. So, okay, I'm not in charge of this. I'm not able to make this up and have it work the way I'm claiming it's going to work. There's something else going on. And then the second step is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And that's turning back to spirituality. And that's a choice. We can make that because we're forced into it, because we hit rock bottom when we wake up one day and we realize that we're feeling all alone because the friends who we'd had and the job that we had and the relationship that we had and maybe the house that we had all went away. So now what have I got? And then we get to do this, this house of cards that I thought was going to last forever didn't. Now what? It's time for me to search for something bigger.
Mm-hmm. But isn't that, I keep going back to, is that wonderful? Because it takes you back to where the core of what you really believe. The whole thing rests upon your belief in God, whatever God was to you, you go back to that when you got nothing else, because God created whatever from nothing. However you think that started, it was from nothing. So here we are.
From nothing but God. Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are again in an exciting place where there's you and this God, and there is almost a nothingness, because when your routine and all of that is taken away, you're like, whoa, there's nothing. But you get to start. And how often do you get to start over without any judgment, without any, nothing punitive, maybe a little bit fearful, but we're not by ourselves in it. So it's like, now on the leadership side, what I see is leaders trying to recreate what was. And I'm saying, how's that working out for you? I don't think it's going to be that way. I'm not even seeing it close. So I think it's such a big challenge, but such a wonderful place to be. You get to try it differently. And I know that I'm like in La La Land, but there's
maybe not.
There is God, there's God. So as long as there's God, we're cool. We are okay. If we try something different and it doesn't work, we get to say, okay, let's pray. If you can't figure out how to pray, you can grab Bill Marcioni's book and pick one out of there. We're in when did this ever happen? This kind of freedom to be new and spontaneous. When did that ever happen?
And when it happens, if we deny it, oh, well, see, we had that pandemic and it went away, so now everything's back to normal. It's like we're discarding the gift.
Yes.
The new possibility that's existing in there. And you're talking about, getting Bill Marcioni's book. I was talking to my nephew, who is a newfound convert to Judaism, and was talking to him about the kind of prayers that he does. And he told me, and it's like, you got a couple of the steps in a different order than I use them, but you pretty much nailed it. That's a practical prayer. And that he didn't think that's what he was doing, but it was effective. That's what makes it resonate for him. So yeah, whatever that spiritual practice is, whatever it is that you want your relationship with the divine to be, invite it and work on it. You get in a brand new lusty relationship, you actually need to be together for a while and work out how you're going to have a relationship. And the same thing is true of your spirituality. God is not an easy date.
But the good thing is you don't have to go it alone. There's so many. The closet opened up, all different kind of closets opened up. And we're standing here thinking, I'm looking like, is this really happening? Look at what is the possibilities. I got that from you, by the way, right? Infinite possibilities. And I shared with somebody. That really changed a lot for me, because I'm good. I came from a small bubble, obviously, and I was good in my bubble. I was good until I was feeling like I needed to grow out. I was outgrowing it, but didn't see where, and you said infinite possibilities. And I thought, wait a minute, that means there's other possibilities other than what I see here, the ones that I've already knocked down and mastered, so to speak. And I don't mean that in an arrogant sense. I'm just saying when your world is small, it's small. So you say infinite possibilities. I didn't even have to deal with the infinite part, which I did anyway, but other possibilities? Oh, wait a minute. Let's go with this. And see what we can find. But that kind of freedom, I'm not always seeing that. Maybe because, forget it. I'm not giving any excuses. It's forget what I was going to say. The door is wide open and it's very welcoming. And oh, by the way, there are a lot of voices that you can hear that may have been closed out to you at some point that can speak to you now. and saying, for example, I'll get an idea. And the first thing I'll think is, well, if I think of it, somebody else has already thought of it. So that's great because that means I could put my flavor to it and now I got something new.
Okay.
Yeah, because so it's not like it's one and done. It's more than you can imagine. It depends on how big your God is. And I think this whole thing also is a test to that. And not that God out there threw a test on us. It's just a space where you can almost test yourself.
Well, yeah, we were born into a laboratory with, certain constrictions and restraints and rules and limitations that have been put into our awareness. And the purpose of the lab is to see how it goes. So it's not like there's a right or a wrong. It's, we can identify and judge whether something is good or bad. That's how far it came from what we had desired or expected or wanted. But it's not in the grand scheme of things, in the infinite possibilities scheme of things, that it's good or bad. Let's take another break. And when we continue, two fascinating topics, free-range chickens and infinite possibilities.
Free-range chickens.
Mm-hmm. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at BeTheLight.com. That's B-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at BeTheLight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
I managed to surprise you before the break.
Yeah.
Infinite possibilities and free-range chickens.
I can't wait for the free-range chickens part.
This is something that I was exposed to, and this is decades ago. This was back when the idea of free-range chickens was just coming into vogue, and it's like, oh, well, they're kind of like the hippie chickens and they get to do whatever it is that they want, and they're like much more natural than other chickens. And a friend of mine was at that point engaged to a woman who was a poultry scientist. And we were having a conversation about free-range chickens, and she says, well, it's not what you think. There's no such thing as a free-range chicken the way that you're thinking about it. Because if you take a chicken and you put it in a yard or a forest, and it has as much space to go as it wants, it can go anywhere, and you feed it wherever it is, it doesn't go very far. It just wanders around in the area where it's getting fed, hanging around with the same chickens that it always hangs around with, and it's going to spend its entire lifetime there. Now, technically, is it a free-range chicken because it can walk a mile away? It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference because that is the nature of chickens. And that's okay. That brings us to infinite possibilities. Because in so many ways, we are behaving like free-range chickens. We are not limited by anything outside of ourselves, but we keep ourselves in that same little yard where we've always been because it's comfortable and we're familiar with it. And that's the prayer today, is to open to a bigger possibility, to open to the idea that perhaps the way that I've done it before, the old normal, and the new normal is not going to be a repeat of the old normal. Perhaps the new normal is going to be something different. Perhaps it's not going to be free range where I keep myself within the same 12 square yards or whatever it is. And there's something new. So what I invite you to do is to close your eyes. And what that does is it lets us let loose our attachment to the thought that we know what's going on because our senses are telling us what's going on. With our eyes closed, the picture becomes much bigger than just the details that are coming in through our optic nerve telling us what this thing in front of us looks like. There's the possibility to become aware of something that's out of sight, that's behind us, that's above us, that's beneath us. There's stuff crawling around underground that we are not able to see. And it doesn't mean that it's not there. There's a lot of richness and details going on in the world around us. If you're indoors and there's a wall near you, is it just a wall? Is it a wall with multiple materials that have been constructed and layered in such a way to make the inside of the room pretty and comfortable, and the outside of the room durable and weatherproof? There's a lot that's going on that we don't pay attention to, and we don't have to pay attention to, but that doesn't mean that it's not there, and it doesn't mean it's not important. So as we open our awareness to what already is, and consider that there's a different possibility in every one of these circumstances. Is it possible for me to be in a different room? Is it possible for me to have a different relationship? Is it possible for me to feel spiritually filled and fed in a different way? As we open to those possibilities, as we open to the awareness that there is one infinite creative power, one divine presence, one source that shares itself as all of its creation, has been doing so since the very beginning of time. Scripture said, in the beginning there was darkness and void. Nothing there. And God said, let there be light. So there was God. And there was God there with the ability to say something, let there be light. And then something responded to God, and there was light. And that divine power and presence, that God essence, is still here. It is still working. It is still creating. And that law that responded and made the command so is also still operating. You tell the story in terms of the Big Bang, it's the same story. So that creative process, that divine creative principle, is operating all the time, everywhere. A conscious intention sets that law in motion, and then it brings something different into experience. So in this universe of infinite possibilities, anything is possible. That's what infinite possibilities means. So the first thing that I'm going to claim is an even deeper awareness of the possibilities that are open to us. A greater insight for each one within the sound of my voice, knowing that that infinite creative power, that limitless intelligence abides within. It is everything. It is everywhere. It is not the entire universe except the 3 feet around me. It's all of it. It's all of us. That divine presence taking unique and specific and particular form. So as each of us opens to a greater awareness of the truth, of the love that's unfolding, that newness fills us. And the old circumstance, what used to be acceptable and typical, fades away, perhaps to be replaced by something exactly like it, and perhaps to be replaced by something brand new. The new normal need not be normal. The new normal can bring new possibilities for uplift, for love, for prosperity, for health and vitality and wellness, for connection, for community. Newness is available in all ways. That is infinite possibilities. So I am claiming an engagement with the infinite possibilities that surround us in a way that brings uplift to each of us. So with gratitude for all of this good, already unfolding and continuing to do so, I speak this word and release it into that creative law that creates everything. And I know that it is creating this now. And so I let it be. So it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.